నమస్తే మన టీవీ తెలంగాణకు స్వాగతం. ఈరోజు గురుకుల ఉద్యోగ గైడ్లైన్స్ ప్రోగ్రాంలో జనరల్ సైన్స్ విభాగంలో జీర్ణ వ్యవస్థ గురించి తెలుసుకుందాం. మనతో ఫ్యాకల్టీ కనకరాజు గారు ఉన్నారు. ఆయన అడిగి మరిన్ని విషయాలు తెలుసుకుందాం. అలాగే మీకు కూడా ఏమైనా డౌట్స్ ఉంటే స్క్రీన్ కింద రన్ అవుతున్న నంబర్కు ఫోన్ చేసి మీ ప్రశ్నను స్పష్టంగా అడగవచ్చు. మీ ప్రశ్న అడిగేటప్పుడు మీ టీవీ వాల్యూమ్ను మ్యూట్లో పెట్టుకోండి. మీకు ఏ డౌట్స్ ఉన్నా నంబర్కు ఫోన్ చేసి మీ డౌట్స్ను క్లారిఫై చేసుకోవచ్చు. నమస్తే కనకరాజు గారు.
నమస్తే అండి
సార్. జనరల్ సైన్స్లో జీర్ణ వ్యవస్థ ఈ టాపిక్ చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్, గురుకులంలో కూడా చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్. ఈ జీర్ణ వ్యవస్థ నుంచి ఎలాంటి క్వశ్చన్స్ రావచ్చు, ఎంత డెప్త్ వరకు సబ్జెక్టును చదువుకోవాల్సిన అవసరం ఉందంటారు?
జనరల్ సైన్స్లో జీర్ణ వ్యవస్థకు సంబంధించి మనకి ఫిజియాలజీ టాపిక్లో మానవుని యొక్క వ్యవస్థలన్నింటిలోని కూడా మొదటిది జీర్ణ వ్యవస్థగా పరిగణిస్తాం. మనం జీర్ణ వ్యవస్థ నుంచి ప్రత్యుత్పత్తి వ్యవస్థ వరకు కూడా అన్నిటిలోని కూడా కూలంకుషంగా బేసిక్ పాయింట్స్ వరకు మాత్రమే బిట్స్ వస్తున్నాయండి. ఎక్కువ డెప్త్ వరకు వెళ్ళట్లేదు కాబట్టి 10th క్లాసు ఫస్ట్ ఇయర్, సెకండ్ ఇయర్, ఇంటర్మీడియట్ వరకు సంబంధించి బేసిక్స్లో వరకు మాత్రం నిర్మాణ వ్యవస్థల వరకు వాటి యొక్క పనితీరు విధానాల వరకు మాత్రమే ఎక్కువగా ప్రశ్నలు అడుగుతున్నారండి.
రైట్. జీర్ణ వ్యవస్థ గురించి పూర్తిగా ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేయండి.
ఓకే అండి. మానవునికి సంబంధించి శరీర దేహంలో ఇంచుమించుగా మనకి ఒక 10 రకాల వ్యవస్థల వరకు ఉన్నాయి. అందులో జీర్ణ వ్యవస్థ దగ్గర నుంచి మొదలుకొని ప్రత్యుత్పత్తి వ్యవస్థ వరకు ఉన్నాయన్నమాట. ఆల్మోస్ట్ దేర్ ఆర్ అబౌట్ ద 10 systems are present in the human body, and starting from the digestive system up to the reproductive system. So out of all of that, the first one is actually the digestive system, and in that today we are going to see about the detailed structure as well as the functional aspects, and how the food is actually get processed and finally it is get absorbed, and what are the various kinds of the disorders that are actually associated with the digestive system. So as you all know that for the survivability of any living organism we require the energy, and for the getting of the energy we require the food, and food is the ultimate source of the energy from which we will get the energy. And food is not only required for the purpose of the energy, but it is also required for the growth as well as the repair of the body tissues. And now food is what actually it is eatable part, and which mainly provided with the nutrients, and the major nutrients that are present inside the food are carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and apart from that the vitamins, minerals are also required in the form of nutrients. In addition to all of that, water is also the one of the important nutrient as we have to take into the consideration. So these are the 6 major nutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water. Out of all these 3, vitamins and minerals and water do not require the process of digestion, because they are directly can be get absorbable. Whereas carbohydrates and proteins and fats, they all are being very big macromolecular substances, very complex, and they cannot be easily get absorbed through the across the digestive wall. So they need actually the process of digestion. So in this process, whatever these complex biomacromolecules are present, and they are broken down into the smaller, easily absorbable substances. So this is what we call it as the digestion. That is a breakdown of the complex food substances like the big macromolecular substances into the simple absorbable substances is called digestion, which is actually achieved through the system called digestive system, and which is actually done through mechanically as well as chemically. And in the mechanical part of the digestion, it includes about the cutting of the food materials, chewing, swallowing, peristalsis movement, and all these actually comes under the part of the mechanical digestion. Whereas under the chemical digestion, breakdown of these big macromolecular substances by means of the enzymatic reactions into the simple absorbable substance. Now let's see the structural aspect of the digestive system, and what are the various types of the components that are actually present in the digestive system. The digestive system actually comprises of alimentary canal and the associated digestive glands. And now the alimentary canal, which is actually starts with the anterior part of the mouth and also ends with the posteriorly with an anus. In between them, various parts of the digestive system are actually present. And now those parts are like starts with the mouth, buccal cavity, esophagus, pharynx, and the stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and finally opens outside through anus. Now when it comes to the each and every part of this digestive system, so anteriorly it's a small slit like structure is present, and which is bounded by upper lip and the lower lip. That's what we call it as mouth, and which in turn leads into a buccal cavity. Now this buccal cavity, it's provided with the, are also called the oral cavity, provided with the palate, and the tongue and the teeth are present. Now palate is a structure which is considered as a roof of buccal cavity or the oral cavity, and which is divided anteriorly into the hard palate and posteriorly into the soft palate, and which actually helps in separation of buccal cavity as well as the nasal cavity. Then it also helps in chewing of the food substances, and also chewing, especially helps in the chewing part. Then another one is the teeth and the tongue. Coming to the teeth, there are the different kinds of the teeth are actually present inside the human being, and those teeth are get classified especially in human beings like being as a mammal. So one is based on the mode of attachment to the jaw bones. And now based on the attachment, because the teeth in case of the human beings, they are embedded within the jaw socket inside the alveolus, they are described as tecodont. Whereas based on the different types of the teeth are present, which are different in functionally as well as structurally. Now they are divided into the four different types. They are incisors, canines, premolars and molars. Incisors, as you know, that helps in the cutting, and the canines are helps in the piercing, and the premolars and molars are especially helps in the chewing of food substances. Now all these four different types of the teeth are get represented in the form of a dental formula in the sequence, that is incisors, canines, premolars and molars, which are present in the half of the upper jaw, incisors, canines, premolars and molars that are present in the half of the lower jaw. So the total number of the teeth which are present in an adult human being is represented in a formula like 2 1 2 3 and by the 2 1 2 3, and in total there are at about the 32 teeth are actually present. Whereas in case of child, you will get it only the 20 teeth are present, in which usually the less number of the canines are present and the no molars are actually present. Now move on to the number of the sets of the teeth that are present, and in case of the human beings, there are the two sets of the teeth are actually present, and they are, first set of the teeth are called the milk teeth, and the second set of the teeth are called as the permanent teeth. First set of the teeth only milk teeth are present, and which are the deciduous, and later they are replaced by the permanent teeth. So like this, that's why the two set this is described as diphyodont dentition. So tecodont, heterodont and the diphyodont, three different kinds of the teeth are described in human beings. Now let's move on to the another part, that is a tongue, and that is actually present. So tongue is a muscular movable part that is attached to the floor of the buccal cavity, and which is actually provided on its surface. Several number of small projection like structures are present, and all those structures we call it as all those structures we actually call them as papillae, and some of these papillae are get provided with some of these papillae are provided with the taste buds. Now and these taste buds are the different types are present, and depending upon their location they are fungiform, filiform and the circumvallate. The different types of the teeth are present, and these taste buds are also responsible for the taste sensing the different kinds of the taste, and like sour, taste, hot, different kinds of the bitter. All these are concerned with us are present within the tongue, within these taste buds. Now especially the tongue is mainly helpful for the swallowing, also helpful for the mixing of the saliva with the food. That is one of the main major functions of this tongue. Now these three parts, like the teeth, tongue and the palate, these three parts are mainly present within the buccal cavity. Let's move on to the next part of the alimentary canal. The buccal cavity opens into the pharynx. Now it opens into a small funnel like structure called pharynx, and the pharynx actually serves as a common passage for both food as well as air. So because through which at the time of the swallowing the food actually passes through the pharynx into the esophagus, whereas at the time of the inspiration and passing of the gases from the internal nostrils, the gases passes through the pharynx into the larynx part. So these are part which is actually regarded as a common passage for both food as well as air. So into this part, both esophagus, the part of the alimentary canal, and the windpipe, that is a trachea, through the larynx, it also opens into pharynx. So because it forms as a common chamber, it's sometimes we eat as well as and swallow, and also we'll use to show the inspiration and expiration part. So because of that one, to prevent the falling of the food materials into the larynx part, so it is get protected by means of a cartilaginous flap like structure at the opening of larynx, that what we call it as glottis. So this glottis is protected by means of a cartilaginous flap like structure called epiglottis. This epiglottis prevents the falling of food materials into the larynx through the glottis at the time of swallowing or deglutition of food materials. So that is a significance of this epiglottis. Then next move on to the another part, the esophagus. Esophagus also opens into the pharynx through an opening, and that opening we call it as gullet. The esophagus, it is a thin, long, muscular tubular part that extends through the neck and then enters into the thoracic region and pierces the diaphragm and opens into the stomach. Then this esophageal part actually get opening into the stomach is guarded by means of a sphincter, and that sphincter we call it as cardiac sphincter. And whereas at the anteriorly you have got another sphincter is present, a normal esophageal sphincter, and whereas before get opens into the stomach, gastroesophageal sphincter actually regulates the opening of esophagus into stomach. Then coming to the next part of the alimentary canal, that is a stomach. And stomach is a sac-like muscular, it's a J-shaped organ, and which is actually located at the upper left part of the abdominal cavity and below the diaphragm. And this stomach actually get divided into three main regions, actually, as we are showing in the figure. So there the three regions are present in the stomach. They are described as cardiac part and the fundic part and the pyloric part. Cardiac part is of the stomach, into which actually the esophagus get opens, and fundic is the main part where the food is temporarily stored and get digested, and the posterior part of the stomach we call it as pylorus. So like this, the stomach is actually get differentiated as the three major parts. Now the opening of this pyloric stomach again opens into the duodenum, which is guarded by a pyloric sphincter. At the anterior you have got the cardiac sphincter, which regulates the flow of the food from esophagus into the stomach, whereas from the stomach into the duodenum it is guarded by means of another sphincter called as pyloric sphincter. Now if you move on to the another next part of the alimentary canal, that is a small intestine. The small intestine majorly has the three regions are present, and in which the anterior U-shaped part of the small intestine call it as duodenum, and the long coiled middle part, that what we call it as a jejunum, and a highly coiled longest part of the alimentary canal which we call ileum. The small intestine, it is about almost 6 to 7 meters in long and 2 to 3 centimeters in diameter. And next part, it leads into the large intestine, and this large intestine provided with several number of parts are present, especially ileum opens into the large intestine, which is actually the wider than that of the large intestine. It has got the three parts. One is the small sac-like structure where the ileum joins the large intestine, and another one which is it is a part actually provided with all the symbiotic microorganisms are present, and from this cecal part a small a finger like projection is formed, and that projection we call it as appendix and arises from here, and the cecum in turn leads into or opens into the next part of the large intestine called colon. Now the colon is also distinguishable into three parts, like the ascending part, and the horizontal or the transverse part. Next one is the descending part. The descending part opens into rectum through a sigmoid colon, and this sigmoid colon in turn leads into the next part of the large intestine or the last part of the large intestine called the rectum. It is a sac-like structure where actually the fecal matter is actually stored, and finally this rectum opens outside through the posterior opening called anus. So these are the different structural parts of the alimentary canal what we have gotten. So in this, all this, if you look at the diagrammatic part of the alimentary canal, starting with all the parts, if you clearly see that all the parts are visible, like it starts with the mouth, oral cavity, then the pharynx leads into the esophagus, stomach in turn opens into the duodenum in turn opens into the jejunum into the ileum. Then if you look at the diagram, like all the large intestine, which is in that large intestine, you have got first one is the cecum, and the cecum is also provided with a small finger-like projection called vermiform appendix, and then it leads into the colon, which has got the horizontal, transverse, and all the three different descending colon, ascending colon, all the three different columns are present. Then it opens into the sigmoid colon finally opens into the rectum. Finally, rectum opens outside through anus, that opening. So like this, we have got all the different parts of the alimentary canal. Let's move on to the histology part of the alimentary canal, starting from the esophagus up to the end of the rectum. And if you cut the TS, or the transverse section of this alimentary canal, it is actually made up of 4 different layers are present, and all those 4 basic different types of the layers are the outermost layer is actually the, we have got outermost layer is actually the serosa layer is present, and below that layer you have got a muscularis layer is present, and below that submucosa layer is present, and the innermost layer is actually mucosa layer. So like this, there are the 4 different layers are present from outside to inside. Serous layer is the outermost layer, and which is made up of connective tissue layer, and below that muscular layer is present. In this muscular layer, towards the outer side, longitudinal muscular layers are present, and below that circular muscle layer are present, especially in stomach and certain regions of the alimentary canal also. In addition to these, you will also provided with oblique muscle layers are also present. And below that, a submucosa layer, which is an important layer provided with the blood vessels, nerves are present, and the lymphatic vessels are also present. And in case of the duodenum part, Brunner's glands are also present within this layer. And finally, the innermost layer is mucosa layer, which is lined with a columnar epithelium, and it is highly get folded, and these foldings are called as rugae, that helps in the expansion of the stomach. That is what we call lugae. And the inner side, you will find the lumen. If you see from outer to inner layer, there the 4 layers are present in sequence: serosa layer, muscular layer, submucosa layer, and finally the mucosa layer. And this is a mucosa layer which forms actually the rugae. In case of the stomach, they are blunt, but whereas when it comes to the intestine, especially at the ileum part, it forms into a small finger-like projections, which we call them as villus, and each villus inside provided with a blood capillary network. In addition to that, it is also provided with a lymphatic vessel is present called lacteal. So which is called a lymphatic vessel is called a lacteal. So each villus is lined with a columnar epithelium, and the epithelial cells are present, which are highly absorbed in function, and they are also provided with a microvilli are present that helps in increasing the area of the absorption. And in addition to that, in between the 2 villi, you will find a small crypts-like structures are present, and which functions as intestinal glands, and which are called crypts of Lieberkühn, and this functions as an intestinal glands. So the main function of these villi are to increase the area of absorption. So this is actually the histological part of the alimentary canal. Now coming to the another part, if you look at the inside the buccal cavity, we have got the different types of the teeth are present, that about which we already discussed. If you look at the diagrammatic part, as I told you previously, all the 4 different types of the teeth, like incisors, canines, premolars and molars, and all together forms into the 4 different sets of the teeth are present. This is how all the 4 different types of the teeth are get arranged in case of an adult man. Now let us move on to the different types of the glands that are present in case of the human alimentary canal. So Actually, the digestive system includes about the alimentary canal and associated digestive glands. Now, move on to the part the associated digestive glands. The digestive glands are actually divided into two different types which are associated with the alimentary canal, which are present outside the alimentary canal and which are present inside the alimentary canal. Which are present outside the alimentary canal are, one is the salivary glands, pancreas and liver. These are all present outside, whereas the which are present inside within them are gastric glands and intestinal glands and the Brunner's glands. These are actually present within the alimentary canal. Among them, the first one is actually the salivary glands. So, in case of the generally in all the mammals, there are the 4 types of the salivary glands are present, but when it comes to the human beings, there are only 3 pairs of salivary glands are present, which are parotid glands and sublingual glands and submaxillary glands. And all along with their ducts, they actually get opens into the buccal cavity. And parotid glands, which are actually located at the base of the external ear, whereas the sublingual glands are located below the tongue. Submaxillary glands are located at the angles of the inner jaw, and with their respective ducts, they open into buccal cavity. Now, all the secretions of these glands, collectively called as saliva, which especially contains the electrolytes like sodium, potassium, chloride, bicarbonates. These are all the different types of the electrolytes are present. In addition to that, they are also provided with the various kinds of the enzymes are also present inside the saliva. Like the main enzymes that are present are the ptyalin, that helps in the digestion of starch substances especially, and in addition to that, lysozyme is also present that act on the bacterial cell wall. So, next move on to the another kind of the glands that are present is pancreas. So, pancreas, it is actually an elongated compound gland. It has got it's an yellowish in color, located within the loops of duodenum, and which it has got 2 parts, like exocrine part and the endocrine parts are present. Almost 98% of the pancreas is actually exocrine in function, whereas the 2% is actually endocrine in function. The exocrine part actually provided with pancreatic acini are present, and within that acinar cells are present, responsible for secretion of pancreatic juice, and which consists of the various kinds of the enzymes are present within this pancreatic juice. And the remaining part is actually the endocrine part, and which consists of the 2 different secretes the 2 different types of the hormones, especially the insulin and glucagon. With the ducts which actually arises from this pancreas and in turn get joins with the common bile duct to form the hepatopancreatic duct, that opens in turn into the duodenum of the alimentary canal, and that is actually get guarded by a sphincter called sphincter of Oddi. Then the next move on to the another gland, that is one of the major gland as well as the largest gland present in our body out of all the different types of the glands, and that is a liver. So, liver is the largest gland and it almost weighs about 1.2 to 1.5 kgs in the adult human being, and just located opposite to the stomach. It is located just below the diaphragm and right side to the abdominal cavity, which consists of the 2 lobes, and each these lobes are get divided into the hexagonal lobules, and these lobules are actually contains about the hepatic cells are present, and these hepatic cells are actually arranged in the form of cords, and those called as hepatic cords, and which are these cords are radially arranged around they are actually radially arranged and around the central intralobular vein. So, each lobule is entirely gets surrounded by a thin connective tissue sheath, which is called a Glissen's capsule. Now, the cells of this liver, which are called the hepatic cells, responsible for the secretion of the digestive juice called bile juice, and which is actually get collected by means of several number of ductules, and these ductules from the lobes unite to form into hepatic ducts, and these hepatic ducts in turn unite to form into a common hepatic duct, and the common hepatic duct in turn joins with the common hepatic duct in turn get joins with the bile duct and the bile duct, and in turn get forms into a common bile duct. Now, this common bile duct in turn gets joins with the pancreatic duct and forms into a hepatopancreatic duct that opens into the ampulla, which is also called ampulla of water, and that opens into the proximal part of the duodenum, which is actually guarded by the sphincter of Oddi. So, this is a whole the structure of the liver, and in between these lobules you will also provided with a small greenish sac like structure is present called gallbladder, where the bile juice is actually temporarily stored. So, which is from this the bile juice comes out through the duct of the gallbladder called the cystic duct, and the cystic duct and the common hepatic duct unite together to form into the common bile duct. Common bile duct and the pancreatic duct unite to form into the hepatopancreatic duct, that in turn opens into a duodenum. Then these are the three different types of the glands that are actually present outside the alimentary canal. Let us move on to the glands that are present inside the alimentary canal. One is the gastric glands present inside the stomach, and the one is the intestinal glands. Now, the gastric glands. So, the innermost layer of the stomach provide with the mucosa, and this mucosa are provided with the glandular cells forming the gastric glands. There are the three different types of the gastric glands are classified based on their location actually, and like they are which if they are present in the cardiac, they are called cardiac gastric glands, and fundic they are called fundic gastric glands, and present at the pylorus they are called pyloric gastric glands. And out of these two, the cardiac and the pyloric gastric glands actually secrete the mucus, whereas the major gastric juice is actually gets secreted from the fundic gastric glands. And so, there are the different types of the cells are actually present in this fundic gastric glands. One is the mucus secreting cells are called neck cells, and pepsinogen secreting cells are called peptic cells are the chief cells, and HCl secreting hydrochloric acid secreting cells are called as parietal cells are oxyntic cells. And in addition to that, the caseous intrinsic factor is also gets secreted from the parietal cells, which is actually needed for the absorption of vitamin B12. Then move on to the another glands that are present within the alimentary canal are intestinal glands. And so, the intestinal mucosa forms into in between the will-like crypts, they are called crypts of Lieberkühn, and they are also called the brush border enzymes, and the brush border epithelial cells of the mucosa secrete also some enzymes, and that is why they are called brush border enzymes. And so, in addition to that, duodenum submucosa also provided with the Brunner's glands are present, which mainly secretes the mucus, and these two together we call it as intestinal glands, and collectively so intestine and whatever the secretions that are produced from the Brunner's glands and the crypts of Lieberkühn together we call it as intestinal juice or Saccus entericus. So, there are the several number of enzymes are actually present within this intestinal juice, which consist of disaccharidases, enterokinases, and the aminopeptidases, dipeptidases, lipases, amylase, nucleosidases. So, they all are a part and parcel of this intestinal juice, and also contains the mucus and the bicarbonates are present, which actually secreted from the Brunner's glands, and whose pH has got about 7.21. Now, so we have got the structural aspect and the associated with the digestive glands. And now, let us move on to the how this entire part of the different structures of the alimentary canal and the enzymes which are get secreted from these different digestive glands helps in the process of digestion. So, what exactly the digestion is all about, and as we first initially we looked into the definitional part. So, whatever the food that we are eating contains the macromolecular structures, biomacromolecules, which cannot be easily absorbable. So, we need to break them with the help of enzymes. And so, the process of digestion is accomplished by a mechanical as well as a chemical process in different parts of the alimentary canal. Let us move on to what happens actually inside the buccal cavity after taking the food inside the buccal cavity. The first and foremost is mastication of the food is done, and also then the next part is the facilitation of swallowing. So, teeth and masticate the food along with the help of the tongue, and the saliva is thoroughly mixed with the food with the help of the tongue. Now, as the saliva consists of the mucus that helps in the lubricating and also adhering the masticated food particles to helps in the formation of food bolus. So, as the digestion gets started within the buccal cavity itself, the first and the food materials that are mainly get digested partially inside the buccal cavity are the carbohydrates, especially the starch. 30% of the starch is actually hydrolyzed by the ptyalin enzyme, which is actually required the pH of the 6.8 almost and slightly acidic. It get digested into the maltose. So, starch in presence of the ptyalin get digested into the disaccharide called maltose. So, this a soft ball like structure that is formed within the buccal cavity with a partially digested starch and the masticated within the inside the buccal cavity, what we call it as bolus. And this bolus is conveyed through the pharynx and the esophagus into the stomach. Now, pharynx and the esophagus, these are the two parts where it do not provide with any digestive glands except the mucus secreting one. So, there is no digestion takes place within the pharynx and esophagus. They act as a channel through which the food passes into the stomach. Then the food actually enters from the esophagus into the stomach. Now, as the food enters into the stomach is provided with the highly muscular part and where the food is temporarily stored, and also being it is highly muscular part and it helps in the showing the churning movements, and it's thoroughly get mixed up and get break down into the smaller pieces, and also helps in mixing of the food with the different kinds of the food substances. Now, the stomach, as it is provided with the various digestive glands are present and secretes the different kinds of the enzymes are present, especially the first one is the HCl responsible for making the food into acidic in nature and kills all the microorganisms that are present inside, and the HCl also in turn acts as an enzyme activator, especially for the inactive enzymes like the pepsinogen. So, pepsinogen in presence of the HCl get converted into pepsin, so that the pepsin now can able to act on proteins. Then another enzyme called the prorenin is also present, and which is also get activated by this HCl converted into the renin, and renin in turn get acts on the milk proteins called casein. So, in presence of the calcium and this renin, it is get converted into calcium paracaseinate, and on which the pepsin in turn get acts and get convert into the peptones. And so, this calcium paracaseinate, which is actually formed in the process of the milk protein digestion, we call it this called as curling of milk. So, only the proteins are being partially get digested inside the stomach. Now, this partially digested acidic food which is formed inside the stomach is called as chyme. Now, this chyme, after the temporary storage inside the stomach for the almost 3 to 4 hours, now it slowly started entering into the getting delivered into the small intestinal part. So, from where it enters into the duodenum part by this opening of pyloric sphincter. Now, after entering inside the duodenal part, as it started receiving all the different kinds of the enzymes, and the hepatopancreatic duct which is opens into the duodenum, so that this is a part where the bile juice is released, and also the pancreatic juice is also released, and also the Brunner's glands, the mucus secreting glands, they are also get released into this, and the intestinal glands also releases. So, the food is thoroughly get mixed up with all the different kinds of the enzymes, all the different kinds of the digestive juices that are get released into this particular part of the alimentary canal. So, now the first and foremost thing that these digestive juices need to do is conversion of this acidic food, that is chyme, into alkaline in nature, because whatever the enzymes that are present inside the pancreas as well as the intestinal juice, all those works in alkaline medium. So, they are mainly responsible for the especially the bicarbonates that are present and the mucus present inside the intestinal and the pancreatic juice. They are responsible for the conversion of acidic food into alkaline food. So, like each and every digestive enzyme, digestive juices starting showing their action especially on the food substances. So, first and foremost, as the bile juice is get released, but the bile juice is one, it is do not actually contain any digestive enzymes are absent inside the bile juice, but bile juice actually plays the important role, especially the activation of the lipase, and it is also responsible for the contains the sodium tartrate and glycolate bile salts are present, which are responsible for the emulsification of fat, that is breakdown of large fat molecules into a smaller fat molecules. And so like that there are the different fat molecules are being get converted into a small fat molecule. So in that way the bile juice actually play the role in digestion of fats. And then another one the bile juice is plays is the role is, as it do not contain even though the any kinds of the enzyme, it is responsible for the activation of the lipase and also helps in the absorption of fat soluble vitamins. And in that way the bile juice actually helps. And then coming to the pancreatic juice, as the pancreatic juice contains the different kinds of the enzymes are present inside them, initially trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, amylase, there are so many different kinds of enzymes are present. Now the trypsinogen and chymotrypsinogen, they are actually inactive. So these inactive enzymes are get activated with the help of an enzyme called enterokinase. So enterokinase is actually the component of intestinal juice. So as a result of that, so this enterokinase are responsible for acting on the trypsinogen, and the trypsin get converts into active enzyme called trypsin and chymotrypsin. They mainly act on these partially digested proteins and the proteins and get converted into active enzymes. So they are responsible for the getting formation of polypeptide chains and the dipeptides. And now after the protein digestion is over, then the dipeptidases and the tripeptidases are present, which are part of the intestinal juice. They started acting on those substances and get digested finally into the amino acids. And so like this, like the dipeptidases, tripeptidases, these are all actually the components of the intestinal juice. They help in the digestion of proteins. In such how the finally the protein digestion is get completed. Then let's move on to the carbohydrates that are actually present. So anyway, the partial digestion of the carbohydrates occurs inside the buccal cavity, and now we have got pancreatic amylase is present and the intestinal amylase is present. Pancreatic amylase is responsible for the conversion of partially digested starch as well as the starch with the help of amylase enzyme into disaccharidases as well as the trisaccharidases. So especially the disaccharidases are mainly formed, and like maltose, sucrose and the lactose, these are finally formed as a result of the pancreatic lipase enzyme. Finally, these maltose and the maltase, lactase, they all are get digested with the help of disaccharidase enzymes present inside the intestinal juice. So intestinal juice contains a maltase enzyme, and lactase enzyme is present, and the sucrase enzyme are present. So they started acting on this and finally result in the formation of glucose and the galactose, and these are the finally they are formed into the monosaccharides are formed. In such a how the carbohydrates are finally get digested into monosaccharides like glucose and galactose. Then finally the fats are present. The fat digestion is actually occurs as a result of the breakdown of large fat molecules into the smaller fat molecules, which is called emulsification of fat. Now pancreatic lipase is present and the intestinal lipases are also present, and these are responsible for transformation of these lipases into triglycerides as well as into the triglycerides, and these triglycerides finally with the help of intestinal lipase finally get digested into glycerol and fatty acids. So all the three major food substances are get finally digested. Carbohydrates are digested into glucose, and the proteins are finally digested into amino acids. Fats are finally get digested into glycerol and fatty acids, whereas the vitamins and the minerals and the water anyway they do not require any kind of digestion. Now finally whatever the undigested food materials are left out, and those are actually get sent into the cecal part from into the colon and passing into the rectum. Meanwhile, whatever the food substances they are already formed digested, they have started getting absorbed across the intestinal alimentary canal wall of the intestine. So the process of entering from the lumen of the intestine into the blood through the intestinal wall, what we call it as absorption. There are the different ways of absorption are there, and so depending upon the concentration gradients of these food substances, these substances are started entering into the intestinal wall as well as into the bloodstream. Especially the glucose and the amino acids, they are get absorbed which are aided by the sodium and by means of facilitated transport, but mainly initially depending upon the concentrations, as we are saying, initially get absorbed by means of a simple diffusion, whereas if they are different in their concentrated gradients, they can be absorbed through the secondary active transport. Fructose and amino acids are absorbed into the facilitated diffusion. Into the blood also they are get diffused by means of facilitated diffusion. Water simply by means of osmosis process get absorbed, and whereas a simple amino acids are also get absorbed by means of diffusion process. Whereas the fat molecule, when it comes to the simple fat substances that are finally formed, their absorption occurs indifferently. So these small fat molecules that are formed is get transformed initially into the small droplets. They are called micelles, and these micelles are get diffused into the intestinal wall, and later they are get converted into chylomicrons, which are coated by the proteins, and these chylomicrons are through the process called exocytosis, they are sent into the lacteals but not into the bloodstream. Glucose and the amino acids are transported into the bloodstream, but whereas these small simple lipids that are formed, they are actually transported through the lymph, especially into the lacteals. And so from these lacteals later they are get transported to the different parts of the again enters into the blood. From the blood they enter again passed on to the fat substances or the adipose tissue that is present inside our body, where they are again get sent for the storage. Like this, the transport or the absorption of the finally the digested food materials occurs. After this part, once the absorbed is over, and whatever the food materials that are taken inside the body, they are get utilized, especially for the energy or the building up of the body or the growth and repair of the body. So the process of utilization of all these digested food materials is what we call it as assimilation. So once the assimilation process is also over, then we'll move on to the large intestinal part, where the undigested food materials are sent into that, and there is no digestion actually occurs in the large intestine, where only the absorption of the water from the undigested food materials and the formation of the fecal matter through the colon and the rectal part. So finally they are sent outside through this rectum and the anus. That process we call it as egestion or defecation. So such a how the different functions of the alimentary canal are over, and all these are get facilitated with the help of hormonal as well as neural regulations are present. So this is how the whole different systems are get completed, different processes are actually get completed through the alimentary canal as well as its associated digestive glands. This is actually the brief process of the digestion.
సార్ మనము బోలస్ గురించి మీరు ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేశారు. బోలస్కు కైమ్కు ఉన్న తేడా ఏంటి అసలు?
బోలస్ అనేదండి మీకు బకల్ క్యావిటీలో లాలాజలం అనేది సెక్రీట్ అవుతుంది. ఆ లాలాజలం సెక్రీట్ అవ్వడం వల్ల ఏమవుతుందంటే, మనం పళ్ళతోటి కొరికిన తర్వాత అది గుండ్రంగా మెత్తగా చేయబడుతుంది అనమాట. చేసిన తర్వాత అది సెలైవాతో కూడా కలిసిన తర్వాత లాలాజలంతో గుండ్రంగా మెత్తగా చేయబడి అందులో కొంతవరకు పిండి పదార్థాలు కూడా జీర్ణమవుతాయి. అలా 30% వరకు పిండి పదార్థాలు కూడా చేయబడతాయి. అలాగ 30% పిండి పదార్థాలు జీర్ణం జరిగి లాలాజలంతో పళ్ళతోటి నాలుగుతోటి మెత్తగా గుండ్రంగా చేయబడి ఏదైతే మనం మింగి గ్రసిన్ లోపలికి పంపిస్తామో దాన్ని మనం బోలస్ అని పిలుస్తాం. ఇది తర్వాత అన్నవాహిక ద్వారా జీర్ణాశయంలోకి ప్రవేశించి అక్కడ HClతో కలిసి అక్కడ కొన్ని ప్రోటీన్లతోటి జీర్ణం కాబడి పాక్షికంగా ఆమ్లయుతంగా ఉన్నటువంటి ఆహారాన్ని ఏమో ఖైమ్ అని పిలుస్తాం అన్నమాట. ఇది దీనిని మన జీర్ణాశయం దగ్గర నుంచి చిన్న ప్రేగులోకి పంపించబడతాం. దీన్ని ఖైమ్ అని పిలుస్తాం. ఇది రెండింటికి.
శరీరంలో రెండవ మెదడు అని దేన్ని పిలుస్తారు సార్?
శరీరంలో రెండవ మెదడు మనకి మెడుల్లా ఆబ్లాంగేటా అనేది ఒకటి ఉంటుందండి. అది సో విచ్ ఈజ్ దాన్ని మనము చిన్న మెదడుగా పరిగణిస్తాం మనం. దీని ప్రాసెస్లో మనకి మింగడం అనే ప్రాసెస్ లాంటిది కానీ, లేదా ఈ పెరిస్టాలిసిస్ అని అంటాం మనం, ఆహార పదార్థం ఆహార వాహిక లోపల ఏ విధంగా అయితే చలించబడుతుందో ఇవన్నీ కూడా దాని యొక్క ఆధీనంలోనే ఉంటున్నాయి అన్నమాట.
రైట్ సార్, ఒకరు ఫోన్ లైన్లో రెడీగా ఉన్నారు. రైట్, మీ పేరు, మీరు ఎక్కడి నుంచి మాట్లాడుతున్నారో చెప్పి మీ ప్రశ్నను స్పష్టంగా అడగండి.
సార్ నేను గీత వరంగల్ నుంచి మాట్లాడుతున్నాను.
చెప్పండి.
చెప్పండి.
అదే బయాలజీలో ఏమేమి టాపిక్స్ కవర్ అవుతుందండి?
ప్రశ్న మళ్ళీ అడగండి, స్పష్టంగా అడగండి.
బయాలజీలో ఏమేమి టాపిక్స్ కవర్ అవుతాయండి?
బయాలజీలో ఏ టాపిక్స్ కవర్?
ముఖ్యంగా మనకి సెల్ బయాలజీ ఒకటమ్మా, బయోమాలిక్యూల్స్ ఒకటి, అలాగే ఫిజియాలజీ పార్ట్, ప్లాంట్ ఫిజియాలజీ ఒకటి, యానిమల్ ఫిజియాలజీ పార్ట్ ఒకటి మెయిన్గా చూసుకోవాల్సినవి. అలాగే జెనెటిక్స్, ఎవల్యూషన్, అలాగే వాటి యొక్క స్ట్రక్చరల్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్స్ కానీ ఇవన్నీ కూడా గురుకులానికి ఎంట్రన్స్కి సంబంధించి అన్నీ కూడా ఎక్కువగా ప్రశ్నలు వచ్చే విభాగాలు అయితే ఇవి ఎక్కువగా మేజర్గా మీరు చూసుకోవాల్సినవి ఏంటంటే సెల్ బయాలజీ ఒకటి, జెనెటిక్స్ పార్ట్ ఒకటి, అలాగే ఫిజియాలజీ అటు ఇటు మొక్కల్లోనూ జంతువుల్లో కూడా అనమాట. ఫిజియాలజీ పార్ట్ ఇన్ బోత్ యానిమల్స్ అండ్ ప్లాంట్స్. నెక్స్ట్ పార్ట్కి వచ్చేటప్పటికి మీకు స్ట్రక్చరల్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్స్ రెండిట్లో, స్ట్రక్చరల్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్ ఇన్ ప్లాంట్స్ యాజ్ వెల్ యాజ్ యానిమల్స్. ఇవి మేజర్గా ఎక్కువగా ప్రశ్నలు అడుగుతున్నవి. మీరు ఇప్పటి వరకు గడిచిన సంవత్సరాలన్నింటిలోని కనుక మీకు పాత ప్రశ్నలన్నింటినీ ఒకసారి మీరు చూసినట్లయితే క్షుణ్ణంగా మీకే ఒక ఐడియా వస్తుంది ఏ ఏ విభాగాల నుంచి ఎక్కువగా ప్రశ్నలు అడుగుతున్నారు అన్నది మీకే తెలుస్తుంది. ఒకసారి దీనికి మీరు చేయవలసిన పని ఏంటంటే గడిచిన 4-5 ఏళ్ల ప్రశ్నపత్రాలన్నింటినీ తీసుకుని ఏ చాప్టర్స్ నుంచి వస్తున్నాయని చెప్పి ఆ విధంగా మనము మన యొక్క ప్రణాళికను వేసుకుని కనుక చదివినట్లయితే మీకు బాగా స్కోర్ చేయగలుగుతారు ఎంట్రన్స్ ఎగ్జామ్లో.
రైట్ సార్, బిజినెస్ అంటే ఏంటి, దాని గురించి కాస్త వివరించండి.
ఏదండి?
బిజినెస్.
వెజినాన్.
ఎస్.
Vaginal part, it's a part of the female reproductive system and it's considered as an external genital organ అని అంటాం మనము. So which helps in the it's actually the part of the female reproductive part, external genitalia అని కూడా అంటాము, covered by the major lips or the minor lips అని అంటాం, mesora, minora lips అని అంటాం. అండ్ ఇది ఉల్వా ద్వారా బయటికి ఓపెన్ అవుతుంది అనమాట. ఇది జననరంధ్రము అని కూడా అంటాం తెలుగులోని. దీని ద్వారానే ప్రత్యుత్పత్తి వ్యవస్థలో ఒక భాగంగా చెప్తామన్నమాట మనం.
పెద్ద పేగు పొడవెంత, అసలు దాంట్లో భాగాలు ఏమైనా వివరిస్తారా?
మనకి మొత్తము పొడవును కనుక తీసుకున్నట్లయితే మనకి ఇంచుమించుగా 6 మీటర్లుగా పరిగణిస్తామండి ఇంటెస్టైన్. అందులో వాటిలోకి వచ్చేటప్పటికి 3 to 4 మీటర్స్ వరకు పెద్ద ప్రేగే ఉంటుంది. ఎందుకంటే ఎక్కువగా పొడవుగా వచ్చేటప్పటికి చిన్న ప్రేగులో ఇలియమే ఎక్కువగా పొడవుగా ఉంటుంది. కానీ ఇందులో కంపారిటివ్గా చిన్న ప్రేగు కంటే పెద్ద ప్రేగు యొక్క పొడవుకి వచ్చేటప్పటికి తక్కువే ఉంటుంది. అందులోకి వచ్చేటప్పటికి ఒక 2 to 3 మీటర్స్ లెంత్ వరకే చెప్తాం. అందులో మొదటి భాగం ఏంటంటే సీకమ్ అని అంటాము. అండ్ ఇట్స్ ఆల్సో ప్రొవైడ్ విత్ అన్ వర్మిఫార్మ్ అపెండిక్స్. ద నెక్స్ట్ పార్ట్ ఈజ్ యాక్చువల్లీ ద కోలన్ అని అంటాం. కోలన్లో మళ్ళీ 3 విభాగాలుగా ఉంటాయి వాటిలోనమాట. అసెండింగ్ కోలన్, ట్రాన్స్వర్స్ కోలన్, డిసెండింగ్ కోలన్ అని అంటాం. నెక్స్ట్ పార్ట్కి వచ్చేటప్పటికి సిగ్మాయిడ్ కోలన్ ఒకటి ఉంటుంది, అలా రెక్టమ్ ఉంటుంది. ఇవన్నీ కూడా పెద్ద ప్రేగు యొక్క భాగాలేనండి, పార్ట్స్ ఆఫ్ ద లార్జ్ ఇంటెస్టైన్ అనే చెప్తాం.
రైట్ సార్, ఇంకొకరు ఫోన్ లైన్లో రెడీ ఉన్నారు. రైట్, మీ పేరు చెప్పి మీరు ఎక్కడి నుంచి మాట్లాడుతున్నారో చెప్పి మీ ప్రశ్న స్పష్టంగా అడగండి. రైట్, మాట్లాడండి.
హలో,
చెప్పండి.
నా పేరు శ్రవంతి సార్, నాగర్కల్ నుంచి ఫోన్ చేస్తున్నాను.
చెప్పండి శ్రవంతి.
ఈ ప్రిలిమ్స్ ఎగ్జామ్ లో జనరల్ స్టడీస్ విభాగంలో బయోసైన్స్ కి ఎన్ని క్వశ్చన్స్ వచ్చే అవకాశం ఉంది?
బాటనీ జువాలజీ నుంచి కనుక మీకు 60 క్వశ్చన్ల వరకు అడుగుతున్నారమ్మా. ఒక 30 వృక్షశాస్త్రం నుంచి, ఒక 30 అయితే జంతు శాస్త్రం నుంచి వస్తున్నాయి మీకు. దీనికోసం మీకు ముఖ్యంగా 9th 10th కానీ అలాగే ఇంటర్మీడియట్ ఫస్ట్ ఇయర్ సెకండ్ ఇయర్ వీటిలోంచి బుక్స్లోంచి కనుక మీరు చదువుకున్నట్లయితే మీరు బాగా స్కోర్ చేయడానికి అవకాశం ఉంటుందండి.
రైట్, ఆమ్లాలో pH విలువ ఏదన్నా చెప్పగలరంటారు?
ఆమ్లాలు మనకి బకల్ క్యావిటీ దగ్గర నుంచి సెలైవా ఒకటి, అందులో ఒకటి సెక్రెట్ అవుతుంది. ఇది బాగా pH ఎక్కువగా ఉన్న వాటిల్లో ఎక్కువ. దానికి ఇంచుమించుగా మీకు 0.9 to 1.2 వరకు ఉంటుందన్నమాట. అందుకే బాగా ఎక్కువగా ఆమ్లయుతమైనది ఉన్నది అని అనుకుంటే కనుక మనకి HCl వల్ల జీర్ణాశయంలో ఒకటి సెక్రెట్ అవుతుంది. దాన్ని మనము గ్యాస్ట్రిక్ జ్యూస్ అని ఒకటి అంటాము. అలాగే నెక్స్ట్ pH కొంచెం మీకు ఎక్కువ ఉండేది ఏంటంటే సెలైవా ఒకటి 6.8 వరకు ఉంటుంది. ఈ రెండు కూడా మీకు ఎసిడిక్గా ఉంటాయి. ఒకటి గ్యాస్ట్రిక్ జ్యూస్ ఒకటి విచ్ హ్యాస్ గాట్ ఆల్మోస్ట్ లోయెస్ట్ pH అని అంటాము, హైలీ ఎసిడిక్ అని అంటాం బికాస్ HCl ఉండడం వలన 0.9 to 1.2 వరకు ఉంటుంది. సెలైవరీ జ్యూస్కి వచ్చేటప్పటికి మీకు ఆల్మోస్ట్ 6.8 ఉంటుంది, అందుకని విచ్ ఈజ్ ఆల్సో మీకు ఎసిడిక్గానే ఉంటుంది. When it comes to the bile juice and intestinal juice and pancreatic juice, they are little bit above the 7 pH. They all are alkaline. Like highest మీకు వచ్చేటప్పటికి ఇంటెస్టైనల్కి కొంచెం 8.2 అలా ఉంటుంది, బైల్ అండ్ ప్యాంక్రియాటిక్ జ్యూస్కి వచ్చేటప్పటికి 7.2 7.4 ఉంటుంది అనమాట. సో ప్రాథమికంగా ఫస్ట్ జీర్ణక్రియ అంతా ఆమ్లయుతంగా జరుగుతుంది, తర్వాత ద్వితీయంగా అంతా జీర్ణక్రియ క్షారయుతంగా జరుగుతుందండి.
రైట్ సార్, ఇంకొకరు ఫోన్ లైన్లో ఉన్నారు. రైట్, మీ పేరు, మీరు ఎక్కడి నుంచి మాట్లాడుతున్నారో చెప్పి మీ ప్రశ్న స్పష్టంగా అడగండి. మీ ప్రశ్న అడిగే ముందు మీ టీవీ వాల్యూమ్ మ్యూట్లో పెట్టుకోండి.
ఓకే హలో సార్.
రైట్, మాట్లాడండి.
సార్ గుడ్ ఆఫ్టర్నూన్ సార్.
గుడ్ ఆఫ్టర్నూన్, మాట్లాడండి.
సార్ ఈ డ్రాయింగ్ సిలబస్లో ఈ డ్రాయింగ్ పార్ట్ ఎంత వస్తుంది సార్ మా క్వశ్చన్?
మీకు బయాలజీకి వచ్చేటప్పటికి పటము ఆధారంగా చేసుకునే ప్రశ్నలు ఉండొచ్చండి. కొన్ని ప్రశ్నల్లో ప్రీవియస్గా మీకు గురుకుల ఎంట్రన్స్లో తీసుకుంటే గనక అక్కడక్కడ 1-2 ప్రశ్నలు ఇచ్చిన ఆధారాలు అయితే ఉన్నాయి. అందుకని చెప్పి మీరు అది ఈ విభాగం అన్నది మనం పర్టికులర్గా చెప్పడానికి అనేది ఏమీ లేదు, కానీ బయాలజీ అంటేనే మీకు అందులో ఎలాగ డయాగ్రామ్స్ ముఖ్యంగా ఉంటాయి కాబట్టి ఆ డయాగ్రామ్ ఆధారిత వాటిలో మీరు చదివేటప్పుడు ఎలాగా కూడా డయాగ్రామ్ చూసుకుంటూనే చదువుతూ ఉంటారు కాబట్టి ఆ పటము వాటికి సంబంధించినటువంటి భాగాలు మీకు ఉంటాయి కాబట్టి ఏ భాగము ఏ దాన్ని సూచిస్తుంది అన్నది ఒకటి చూసుకోవడం ఒకటి, ఆ భాగం యొక్క విధి నిర్వహణ ఏంటి అన్నది కూడా అడగడానికి అవకాశం ఎక్కువగా ఉంటుంది. ఈ భాగం ఏది అని చెప్పి గుర్తించమని అడుగుతూ ఉంటారు, లేదు అంటే కనుక ఆ భాగము ఏ పనిని నిర్వర్తిస్తుంది అని కూడా అని అడగడానికి ఆధారం ఉంటుందండి. ఎక్కువగా మీకు ఒక 2-3 క్వశ్చన్ల కంటే ఎక్కువగా కనిపించట్లేదండి. మీరు ప్రీవియస్గా పేపర్స్ కనుక చూస్తే కనుక ఎక్కువగా అయితే ఏమీ లేవు, ఒక 2-3 అయితే రావడానికి అవకాశం ఉంది అండి.
రైట్ సార్, అంతర్చూషకాల గురించి కూడా కాస్త వివరించండి సార్.
ఇంటెస్టైనల్ విల్లై అని అంటామండి. ఇవి దే ఆర్ యాక్చువల్లీ ప్రెసెంట్ ఇన్సైడ్ ద ఇంటెస్టైన్ విచ్ ఆర్ ఫార్మ్డ్ బై ద ఇన్ఫోల్డింగ్స్ ఆఫ్ ద columnar epithelial wall of the intestine, especially the mucosa layer అని అంటాం. And this mucosa layer forms into the small finger-like projections which are called villi, and these villi helps in the increasing the area of absorption especially. అంటే ఆహార పదార్థాలని జీర్ణం అయిపోయిన తర్వాత వాటిని రక్తం లోపలికి శోషించుకోవడానికి ప్రక్రియకి ఎక్కువగా మనకు ఉపయోగపడతాయి అన్నమాట. సో ఆ శోషణ ఉపరితల వైశాల్యాన్ని పెంచడానికి ముఖ్యంగా ఉండడంలో ఈ పాత్ర వహిస్తాయి. అవి ఆంతర్చూషకాల యొక్క పాత్ర, ఇంటెస్టైనల్ విల్లై.
అంతరరసంలో ఎంజిమ్ల పాత్ర గురించి కూడా చెప్తాను.
ఇంటెస్టైనల్ జ్యూస్లో మీకు ముఖ్యంగా అన్నిటికంటే కూడా ఆకరణ మనకి పదార్థాలు, ఆహార పదార్థాలు ముఖ్యంగా జీర్ణమైపోవడానికి సహకరించే వాటిల్లో అన్నీ కూడా ఆంతర రసంలోనే ఉంటాయి. దట్ ఈస్ ఇంటెస్టైనల్ జ్యూస్ అని అంటాం. లైక్ ఇఫ్ యూ టాక్ అబౌట్ ద కార్బోహైడ్రేట్స్, దే ఆర్ ద ఫైనల్ ఆర్ ద డైసాక్రైడేజెస్ విచ్ ఆర్ ద మాల్టేజ్, సుక్రేజ్ అండ్ ద లైపేజ్. దే ఆర్ ద ఫైనల్ విచ్ డైజెస్టివ్ ఫర్ ద కార్బోహైడ్రేట్స్. అలాగే ప్రోటీన్స్ వాటికి మీకు జీర్ణక్రియ చేయడానికి సంబంధించి వచ్చినట్లయితే కనుక డైపెప్టిడేజెస్ అండ్ ట్రైపెప్టిడేజెస్ అండ్ ఎమైనోపెప్టేజెస్ ఇవి కూడా మీకు వీటిలోనే ఇంటెస్టైనల్ జ్యూస్లోనే ఉంటాయండి. అలాగే లైపేజ్ కూడా మీకు ముఖ్యంగా ఇంటెస్టైనల్ జ్యూస్లో ఉంటుంది. ఫైనల్గా గ్లిజరాల్ అండ్ ఎమినో యాసిడ్స్ ఫామ్ అవ్వడానికి కానీ గ్లిజరాల్ అలాగే ప్రోటీన్స్ అన్నీ జీర్ణమైపోయి పూర్తిగా ఎమినో యాసిడ్స్ ఫామ్ అవ్వడానికి, గ్లూకోజ్ అంతా కార్బోహైడ్రేట్స్ అంతా జీర్ణమై గ్లూకోజ్గా ఫామ్ అవ్వడానికి, ఇవన్నీ ఫైనల్ ప్రొడక్ట్స్ అన్నీ కూడా ఇంటెస్టైనల్ జ్యూస్ వల్లే మీకు ఫామ్ అవుతాయి అన్నమాట.
రైట్, ఫోన్ లైన్లో మరొకరు ఉన్నారు. మీ పేరు, మీరు ఎక్కడి నుంచి మాట్లాడుతున్నారో చెప్పి మీ ప్రశ్నను స్పష్టంగా అడగండి. ప్రశ్నను అడిగేటప్పుడు మీ టీవీ వాల్యూమ్ మ్యూట్లో పెట్టుకోండి. మాట్లాడండి. రైట్ సార్, ఫైనల్గా ఇక జీర్ణాశయంలో చిన్న పేగు పాత్ర గురించి చెప్పండి.
జీర్ణాశయంలో మనకి ముఖ్యంగా మొత్తం జీర్ణ వ్యవస్థలో ముఖ్యంగా జీర్ణక్రియకి తోడ్పడే భాగము చిన్న ప్రేగు భాగమే, అలాగే శోషణకి తోడ్పడే భాగము కూడా చిన్న ప్రేగు పాత్రే. అన్నిటికంటే మొత్తం అన్నవాగం మొత్తం తీసుకుంటే కనుక అతి పొడవైన భాగం కూడా ఈ భాగంగానే చెప్తాము. ఈ భాగంలోనే మొత్తము బైల్ జ్యూస్ కానివ్వండి, ప్యాంక్రియాటిక్ జ్యూస్ కానివ్వండి, ఇంటెస్టైనల్ జ్యూస్ కానివ్వండి, ఇవన్నీ కూడా విడుదలయ్యే భాగము కూడా చిన్న ప్రేగుగానే పరిగణిస్తాము. అందుకని చిన్న ప్రేగుకి జీర్ణక్రియగాను శోషణగాను రెండిట్ల ప్రక్రియగాను పాల్గొనే వాటిలో భాగంలో ముఖ్యంగా చెప్పాలి అంటే కనుక చిన్నపేగు యొక్క పాత్రే ముఖ్యంగా ఉంటుంది మిగిలిన వాటి భాగాల కంటే కూడా అనమాట.
రైట్ సార్, ఫోన్ లైన్లో మరొకరు రెడీగా ఉన్నారు. మీ పేరు, మీరు ఎక్కడి నుంచి మాట్లాడుతున్నారో చెప్పి మీ ప్రశ్నను స్పష్టంగా. రైట్ సార్, ఫోన్ లైన్ కట్ అయింది. థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. జీర్ణాశయంలోని HCl కానీ, బోలాస్ కానీ, టీత్, అంత్రచూషణాలు, పెద్ద పేగు, చిన్న పేగు, ఇలా పూర్తి సమాచారాన్ని ఈరోజు మా అభ్యర్థులకు మీరు అందించారు. థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. ఇది జీర్ణ వ్యవస్థ గురించి ఈరోజు తెలుసుకున్నాం. ఈ ప్రోగ్రామ్ మిస్ అయిన వాళ్ళు కూడా మన టీవీ, సాఫ్ట్నెట్ మన టీవీ తెలుగు.com వెబ్సైట్లో కానీ, అలాగే యూట్యూబ్లో కానీ ఈ ప్రోగ్రామ్ను చూసే అవకాశం ఉంది. మరో అంశంతో మళ్ళీ కలుద్దాం. నమస్కారం.